Good morning. This is Heather Garrett from Athene, and I welcome you to our webcast, an in-depth look at suitability process and guidelines in Florida. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items to share. First, you'll notice you are in listen-only mode, which means your phones are muted for sound quality. That said, your questions are welcome and a chat box is available to you within your toolbar. Please submit any questions or comments for our Q&A at the end of the presentation. Lastly, this webinar is being recorded and you will receive a link to the recording following this webcast. Thanks again for joining, and now I will hand it over to Eric Stanley, Director of Compliance at Athene.
Thank you very much, and thanks for everyone for taking the time to hop on the call this morning. What we wanted to go over is lately, as everyone's probably seen, we've had some changes in the state of Florida. So we just want to take a time to kind of walk through where those changes came from, why you're feeling it, as well as some of the most common NIGOs that we're getting from a suitability perspective, and then go through some examples, of things that we can accept and things that are unacceptable when it comes to Florida's product comparison and suitability form. So to quickly get started here, so what we want to do is walk through the Florida suitability process, go through different resources we've created to help when Florida paperwork is being completed. We have a Florida Annuity Suitability Questionnaire step-by-step guide. We have a Florida Annuity Disclosure and Comparison of Annuity Contracts step-by-step guide. We're going to walk through some of the most common suitability questionnaire errors, some of the most common comparison errors, and then obviously we will always want to leave it open for any Q&A that anyone has around anything Florida related. Now, a disclaimer that we always like to share is that Athene is not providing any legal advice, and this should not be taken as legal advice. And following the guidance shown does not guarantee suitability approval. So with that, the first thing we want to show is, and kind of discuss is, where some of these changes have occurred. So we actually have received guidance directly from the state of Florida about what they expect when it comes to their suitability form as well as their comparison form. So some of the questions are very self-explanatory when it comes to their form or what they're asking for, and some is what we want to provide some guidance to exactly what they're looking for, what answers are acceptable and what answers are not acceptable. As you know, Florida actually creates and we use their form. We just kind of put our name on their form, so they dictate the questions that we ask in the way that we ask them. So we just want to make sure we can provide as much guidance as we can up front to help producers and back offices when you are looking at the forms to making sure they are correct prior to submitting to Athene. So one of the first things that we've created is the Florida Suitability Questionnaire step-by-step guide. These were actually sent out to all Florida producers back on March 11th of this year. And so these were all sent out in a big blast email. And if you do not have them, please get a hold of us here at Athene. We will get those to you as well as they are available on our portal. So the Annuity Suitability Questionnaire step-by-step guide, basically what it does is it takes you question by question on the Florida suitability form, giving you a good idea of what they're looking for and then kind of some red flags to pay attention to. One of the big ones, and we're going to talk about it here as we get a little bit more in depth, is question number 7 on the suitability form. There are answers that are acceptable and then there are answers that are not acceptable. For example, an answer of mutual funds and certificate of deposit 12 years is unacceptable because each individual investment needs its own length of time, whereas mutual funds 10 years, certificate of deposit 10 years would be acceptable. As well, answers of like 10 plus years or 15 plus years is not acceptable because the state of Florida doesn't know what is 10 plus. Is that 10 and a half or is that 20? So they're looking for very specific answers when it comes to these types of questions. This is the type of guidance you can get from these guides. So best thing I would probably say, when you're completing the Florida paperwork, have these guides in front of you. This is going to be how you get it to Athene correctly the first time. Next, we have the product comparison step-by-step guide. Again, it's just a guide to take you through question by question of the comparison form to help you understand what the question is asking for and also give some guidance on what is and is not acceptable type of answers. So we're going to dig into this a lot more here in depth, but I just want to be able to provide these resources in case you have not seen them. Again, if you do not have them, please get on our portal, download those, or get a hold of a member of our sales team and we can get those to you. But they are really invaluable to make sure that you are completing Florida paperwork correctly the first time. So to get straight into, some of the most common errors that we see when it comes to Florida, again, to help everyone kind of know what to pay attention to. This is the financial information on the Florida suitability form. They ask for annual income and they ask for annual household income. Unlike other states with Athene, Florida only asks and expects answers around household when they specifically ask it. So 3A is meant for just the owner of the contract, not the owner's household. Source of income, that's the source of income for just the owner, not their household. Question 3C then asks for the annual household income. So one common mistake that we see on these, definition of household is applicant and applicant's spouse or domestic partner as applicable by state law. This does not mean boyfriend, girlfriend. It does not mean mother, father, son, daughter, aunt, uncle. It's only applicant and applicant's spouse or domestic partner as applicable by state law. So one of the common errors that we see is that the values are not consistent. So a good order example of this question is that the owner has $100,000 in annual income. They receive their annual income source is wages, and the annual household income is $250,000. That's perfectly acceptable. What we would assume at that point is that they have a spouse who meets that household qualification, who earns an additional $150,000 a year, giving the total household income is $250,000. That's a perfectly acceptable answer. Now, a not in good order example is where the owner has annual income of $250,000. The source is wages, but then somehow the annual household income is only $200,000. The reason that's not good is it's not possible for the household to have less than the owner. Now, they can have the same, but the household cannot have less. So 3C should not be less than 3A. So annual income and annual household income can be the same, but the annual household income cannot be less than the owner's annual income. So just, making sure that that information matches up prior to submitting to Athene will help save some back and forth. The other key rule in the state of Florida is that we cannot take anything over the phone. So any corrections to the product comparison and the suitability questionnaire must be in writing from the customer. And there's also a 10-day requirement that 10 days after the customer signs and dates or initials and dates this paperwork, it has to be to Athene. If we do not have that within 10 days, you have to actually go back out to the customer and do it again. So it has to make sure it's to Athene within 10 days of when that information is signed, dated, or initialed and dated. And that goes for the initial paperwork and any corrections. But again, everything has to be in writing. So kind of continue some of the common errors on the suitability questionnaire. Again, we kind of highlighted this when we were going over the step-by-step guide, but the question number 7, please list your investment experience by type and length of time with each. So the key is the way they ask the question, by type and length of type with each. So what they are expecting is a time frame for each investment experience. Now, what is the source of the funds for the purchase of the proposed annuity? And then we're going to dig into question 11 here in just a little bit more. So I'm going to hold on that one for a second. But, we kind of have there in red, when doing a replacement of Florida, make sure suitability form question 7 and question 8 and the comparison form question 5 are consistent. These, to some degree, are asking similar questions. And we're going to go through some examples of how that looks. So it'll make more sense here in a minute when we kind of walk through some examples. Now, specifically to question 7, a good example of a suitability form completion on question 7 is CD 5 years, annuities 8 years, stocks 15 years, bonds 15 years, mutual funds 15 years. Now, a lot of what we see and we have to NIGO for is CD 5 years, annuity 8 years, stocks, bonds, mutual funds 15 years. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds cannot be tied together. You have to break those out. of stocks 15, bonds 15, mutual funds 15 years. Another example of that would be a NIGO is CD is 5+ years, annuity 8+ years, stocks, bonds, mutual funds 15+ years. Now there's a couple issues here. One, stocks, bonds, and mutual funds cannot be tied together. Each individual has to have their own time frame, and you cannot have 5+, 8+, 15+, because what is 5+? Does that mean 5.5? Does it mean 7? Does it mean 9? We can't make any assumptions. That's why it has to be clear. And then make sure anything listed in question 8 on the suitability form is included in question 7 if it is an investment. So I'm going to give you an example. Money is coming to us. So question 8, what is the source of the funds? They put annuity. Question 7 has the answer of CD 5 years, stocks 15, bonds 15. Well, the reason we know something's wrong is an annuity is an investment. If we are getting money from an annuity contract, that means they have investment experience with an annuity. Annuity has to be included in question 7. So we have to make sure everything is consistent. If the source of funds coming to Athene is an investment and not included in question 7, we have to NIGO for it. Now, this is something that we do see common come up on the Florida suitability form, is the fact of on the last page of the Florida suitability form, it asks for some acknowledgements and then after that some signatures. And there's 4 boxes you can choose from. You can refuse to provide information at this time from the customer's perspective. The customer has chosen to provide limited information at this time. The producer is saying that the customer is saying that their annuity purchase is not based on the recommendation of the agent or the insurer, or that my annuity purchase is based on the recommendation of the agent or insurer. Now, from an Athene perspective, there's only one acceptable answer. Athene does not allow a customer to refuse to provide information or provide limited information. Also, Athene does not allow the customer to purchase an annuity that was not based on the recommendation of the agent or the insurer. So the best way I can phrase this is that from an Athene perspective, there is only one acceptable answer, where it was based on the recommendation of the agent and nothing about they refused to provide information, they provide limited information, or is not based off the recommendation of the producer. If one of those top 3 is chosen, it is something that we would decline that case and it would have to be rewritten. It's not just something you can simply change the answer to then get it accepted through. You would have to rewrite that contract. From an Athene perspective, there's only one acceptable answer. So going on to the product comparison from the suitability form. So now we're on to the product comparison form, and we want to go through some of the common errors. Now, this one may seem, kind of small, but it is one that we're starting to see quite a trend of that's coming in recently. So question 1 on the product comparison worksheet asks for the contract issue date. The left-hand side is the contract being replaced, and the right-hand side is the proposed contract with Athene. Now, obviously, when you complete it, you complete whatever the contract issue date of the contract being replaced is. In this example, 5/15/2001 is when that contract that's being replaced was issued. And then what it asks for on the Athene side is the estimated date the contract will be issued. Now, we obviously don't have any idea when the actual Athene contract is going to be issued. Depends on if it's a replacement, how long it's going to take for money to get here, but you're supposed to estimate it. So here's a good example where they estimated that the contract issue date was July 1st of 2021. And that matches up because the application was signed on 6/30. So no issues there. A not in good order example would be where you have a contract who you estimate that the issue date is going to be July 1st, 2021, but the app wasn't even signed until July 4th. So the best way we can phrase it, the estimated contract issue date of the replacement annuity, the Athene side, cannot be cannot be prior to the application sign date. So you can't say and put that the Athene contract is going to be issued prior to the customer even signing the application, because there's no way that contract issue date would ever be correct. Again, there's no specific way to pinpoint a date, but we know it's not going to be any time frame prior to the application being signed. Just something to pay attention to. Moving on, again, with the product comparison, question 7 on the product comparison form It asks for the annuity maturity date. Now, the annuity maturity date is expected to be a date. Now, on the Athene side, we pre-fill as many questions as we can. And I do see a question in the chat about most carriers have comparison form on the replacing annuity pre-filled. Yes, we do the same thing. If you look at our comparison form, most everything of our questions are pre-filled. So here's an example. The annuity maturity date. We do not have a way to put a physical date in there because it's all going to depend on when the contract is issued. So our stance is, because the contract has not issued yet, it's going to be the later of age 95 or the 20th policy anniversary. Now, when it comes to the contract being replaced, they expect an actual physical date. So, for example, a good example would be 7/15/2032. What we cannot accept is 7/15. Well, 7/15 of what year? We need a full date. We cannot accept age 95 because age 95 is not a maturity date. That's the age. Florida is asking for the date. Another thing we cannot accept is the 20th contract year. Again, Florida is expecting for the contract being replaced an actual maturity date, and 20th contract year does not suffice. We would have to NIGO, and those would have to be corrected by the customer in writing. So make sure to provide the full date and year, as we cannot make any assumptions. So the key I can say is always make sure you have the full month, the full day of the month, and the full year. 7/15/2032. Again, 7/15 is not acceptable. Age 95, 20th contract year. All those are things that we would have to NIGO for to have corrected. Now, starting to get into, there's a couple areas that cause, I'd say probably about 75, 80% of the majority of the NIGOs. So we want to start digging into those, and we're going to spend a little bit of time, but then we always want to make sure, again, we leave some time for questions. Question 12. Question 12 on the comparison form asks very clearly, surrender charge schedule for remaining years. Now, the key there is remaining. If it is a 10-year annuity and there's only 5 years left, this should only show the surrender schedule for the last 5 years. If you kind of go above and beyond and you put the full surrender schedule, we do have to NIGO for it because the question very clearly states for remaining years. So be careful when you're completing this. Make sure you answer just as the question has asked for. 16. So 16 is one of the questions that causes probably some of the most NIGOs. So we want to kind of walk through these. Investment insurance components, and then describe. So here's what we're looking for. We have pre-filled the Athene side with an example of what we're looking for. Things like tax deferral, free partial withdrawals, confinement waiver, terminal illness waiver, market value adjustment, lifetime income withdrawal, those types of things. A lot of times what we see producers on question 16 put in is fixed index. Well, fixed index is not the types of components that the state of Florida is looking for. That's why we've given you the examples on the Athene side to follow. With question 18. Question 18 is asking for any riders or features and then the cost. So, are there riders on the contract? Is there an income rider? Is there an enhanced liquidity rider? Is there a death benefit rider? Is there a return of premium rider? If so, mark yes or no appropriately. You need to state the type of rider or riders. You then need to show the current value of the rider or riders, and then the annual fee associated with either one or multiple of those riders, depending upon how many riders exist. You can always use the space under question 18, that blank space, to provide more information and describe. If it's something where the name of it is the description, like a lifetime income rider, there's really not much to describe. But for example, with some of our contracts, we have something on our Nexus channel, the family endowment rider. Family endowment rider is a lot of times referred to as the FER. You would have to put the rider type as family endowment rider. You then need to describe what a family endowment rider is, because the name of the rider does not basically show the definition of what it means. Well, it is a death benefit rider. So you need to make sure that you are giving descriptions if the name of the rider is not very specific. If it's just called a death benefit rider, then it's a death benefit rider. But if it has a generic name or a more specific name that doesn't actually describe what it is, make sure you describe. Question 20, loss of benefits or enhancements if the existing contract is exchanged. What they're looking for, again, is the same type of information in question 16, tax deferral, free partial withdrawals, confinement waiver, terminal illness waiver, market value adjustment, lifetime income withdrawal. So 16 and 20 should basically be the same answers. And then 21 is living benefits. Again, very similar type of information. On the Athene side, again, we've tried to pre-fill to show you what we're looking for. Free partial withdrawals, confinement waiver, terminal illness waiver, lifetime income withdrawal. So here's the best thing we can say, is that 16, 18, 20, and 21 need to be consistent. The only thing you cannot show in question 21 is anything regarding a death benefit or a death benefit rider. And the reason is because a death benefit or death benefit rider are not a living benefit. There's nothing that provides the customer as they are living. So questions 16, 20, and 21 need to match, excluding any death benefit or death benefit rider from question 21. Now, if 18 talks about a lifetime income rider, then 16, 20, and 21 need to talk about a lifetime income rider. Those questions have to be consistent, or we will NIGO for it, and you will have to go back to the customer. And we know that can cause confusion. So that's why we want to make it as crystal clear as we can that those questions answers should match, excluding any death benefit or death benefit rider option in question 21. So we're going to walk through some examples. So again, product comparison, questions 16, 18, 20, and 21. Question 16 is answered penalty-free withdrawals, return of premium, confinement waiver, terminal illness waiver. Question 18 is answered lifetime income rider. Question 20 and question 21 match question 16 exactly. Penalty-free withdrawals, return of premium, confinement waiver, terminal illness waiver. But something is wrong with this answer. What's wrong with this answer is that 18 talks about a lifetime income rider. So a lifetime income rider has to be mentioned in 16, 20, and 21. So that's what we're talking about is consistency. If you initially look at this answer, 16, 20, and 21 all look good. They all look like they match. That is correct. However, since 18 has a lifetime income rider, you have to mention lifetime income rider in 16, 20, and 21 as well. So another example, you have 16 is penalty-free withdrawals, return of premium, confinement waiver, terminal illness waiver, death benefit rider. 18 is death benefit rider. 20, penalty-free withdrawals, return of premium, confinement waiver, terminal illness waiver, death benefit rider, and 21 is the same answer. On the on looks of this, it all looks correct. Everything's consistent. The key is death benefit rider is not a living benefit, which is question 21. So this is where you have to be very careful of how these questions are asking, because they're all asking for very similar information. The best thing you can do is make sure they all are consistent with the answers. And again, 21, living benefit cannot include death benefit or death benefit rider. If there's anything listed in 18, you need to make sure that's also listed in 16 and 20, and 21 if applicable to being a living benefit. So moving on, so, we talked about there was a couple things on the form that causes about 75, 80% of the NIGOs. What we just talked about was one of those two things, and then this section is the other majority that causes the NIGOs. So that's why we want to spend, some time going through these questions and what Florida expects, and then giving some good and bad examples. So in the product comparison form, question 23 asks for limitations on interest returns. And again, on the Athene side, we try to give you an example of what we're looking for. Spread, cap, par rate. 24, interest rate cap, term. 25, participation rate, term. 26, indexing strategy, and term. So let's walk through those of exactly what is expected. Question 23. Again, question 23, limitations on interest returns. For the existing annuity contract, and now this verbiage is straight out of those step-by-step guides that we discussed. For the existing annuity contract, please describe any limitations on interest returns. For fixed annuities, please provide the fixed interest rate. That is key. If it's a fixed annuity, you have to show us what the fixed interest rate is. For fixed indexed annuities, please provide any limitations on interest returns such as spreads, cap, participation rates, etc. For variable annuities, none or NA are acceptable, but leaving the question blank is not acceptable. So if you have a fixed annuity, the answer would just be 2% fixed rate. If you have a fixed indexed annuity, fixed indexed annuities also have a fixed rate. So question 23 would be as shown, 2% fixed rate, caps and participation rates. It doesn't ask you what the caps are. It doesn't ask you what the par rates are. It's just strictly asking you what are the limitations. The limitations on interest returns are the fixed rate of 2% and caps and participation rates. So that would be acceptable answers for 23. For 24, again, 24 asks interest rate cap and term. So for both the existing annuity contract and the replacement annuity, please provide the current rates and term for each strategy with an interest rate cap. So for fixed, variable, or fixed indexed annuity, none or NA are acceptable if there are no interest rate cap options. But again, leaving the question blank is not. So if the contract being replaced or the contract being purchased do not have any capped options, you can put NA or none. Please list each option separately with all required information. If there are more than 2 interest rate cap options, please continue in the comments and continuations from above section. That's between questions 30 and 31. So we are working currently to get our forms expanded in Florida to provide much more space. If you feel like you do not have enough space on paper apps, you can use that blank section between 30 and 31. If you use Firelight, that actually will give you pretty much unlimited space. So Firelight is always the best way to go. Now, what are acceptable answers for question 24? Again, all they want to see is question 24, interest rate cap and term. So acceptable answers, 3%/1 year, 2.5%/1 year, 5%/2 year. That's all they're looking for. What is not acceptable is S&P 500, 3%, NASDAQ 2.5, because they're not asking for the name of the strategy. They are specifically asking just for the cap rate and the term for each cap rate. If there are 4 cap rates, you need to have 4 answers. If there are 9 cap rates, you need to have 9 answers. You cannot combine anything. You have to show each individually. 25 is very similar to 24. 24 was asking about the cap. 25 is asking about the par rate. So for both the existing annuity contract and the replacement annuity, please provide the current rates and term for each strategy with a par rate. For fixed, variable, or fixed index annuities, none or NA are acceptable if there are no participation rate options, but leaving the question blank is not. So again, very same thing. If the contract you're replacing or the contract you're purchasing at Athene do not have any participation rates, you can mark it NA or none, but you cannot leave it blank. If right now the form gives you a space to put 5 participation rates, if there are more than 5, again, you have that continuation section between questions 30 and 31. If you use Firelight, it gives you unlimited amounts of space to put anything that you need. That is always the best way to go. So good examples of question 25 is 45% 1 year, 65% 1 year, 110% 2 year, 140% 2 year. Again, things that are not acceptable. S&P 500 45, NASDAQ 65, BNP 110. Again, we have to go off what Florida is asking. Florida is specifically asking for the par rate and the term. That is it. So again, it's one of those things. Make sure you're answering the questions as they are asked. Then you get to question 26. Now 26 is what they're asking for, and I'm going to go back a couple slides to show 26. 26 is asking index strategy / term. So with 26, for the existing annuity contract, please provide the name of all strategy options available, including the index and term. If there are more index strategy options in space, again, use the continuation section. This information could be the same as the information provided in question 24 and 25, meaning you're going to be duplicating the terms. So you're going to have multiple times that you tell us the 1 or the 2 year, the 3 year, the 4 year, whatever it is. If funds are coming from a fixed annuity or variable annuity where there are no index strategy options, NA or none could be acceptable. Best way to think about it is that if in question 24 you have NA or none, and in question 25 you have NA or none, then question 26 will be NA or none. Question 26 is the culmination of 24 and 25. So for example, on the examples we just talked about, question 24, you showed 3 cap options. Question 25 had 4 par options. That means 26 should have 7 options shown. S&P 500, 1 year. S&P 500, 1 year. S&P 500, 2 year. BNP Paribas Multi-Asset, 1 year. NASDAQ FC Index, 1 year. BNP Paribas Multi-Asset, 2 year. NASDAQ FC Index, 2 year. The number of cap rates shown in number 24 plus the number of par rates shown in 25 must equal the number of strategies listed in question 26. That is what the state of Florida is asking for. If you start answering question 26, this is not the place to put rates. You've already put the rate. You already put the cap in 24. You already put the par rate in 25. This is strictly the name of the index and the term. So to quickly move on, and then we can start getting some of the questions. One big thing to pay attention to when you're completing these forms for Florida is consistency between the suit form and the product comparison form. So inconsistent examples that cause NIGOs, we're going to walk through some examples. So example 1, we're getting an annuity replacement from Allianz. Question 7 asks, please list your investment experience by type and length of time with each. You answer CD 5 years, mutual funds 15 years, bonds 17 years. So the reason this is NIGO is that the money is coming from an annuity, and annuities are not listed in question 7. You have to list annuities since that is deemed an investment. So that would be NIGO. You would have to go back out to the customer. Example 2, you have source of initial premium on the product comparison worksheet. Question 5 is CDs. Question 7 on the suit form, again, your investment experience. You have annuities 5 years, mutual funds 15, bonds 17. Well, you're missing CDs. CDs is the source of the initial premium that funded the contract that's now coming to Athene. That's one of the questions that the state of Florida asks. What is the initial premium that's funding the contract that's now being replaced to Athene? If CDs are what funded the annuity that is now being sent to Athene, then CDs is an investment experience that has to be included in question 7. We would have to NIGO for this, and it would have to be corrected by the customer in writing. And then number 3 is that on the last page of the comparison form and on question 11 of the suitability form, it's going to talk about if there are any charges, fees, surrender loss, anything like that. Consistency is the key. So question 11 on the suitability form asks, will the proposed annuity replace any product? Yes or no? If yes, will you pay a penalty or other charge to obtain these funds? Yes or no? If yes, total amount of the charge penalty, and then if applicable, positive or negative MVA. Now, make sure you don't just on the MVA put 12,000. Is it positive 12,000 or is it negative 12,000? You have to be clear. If not, we will have to NIGO for it. So again, make sure you're specific. We can't make any assumptions at all. You have to make sure you tell us, you break out the total amount of the charge penalty and then MVA separately, positive or negative. So when we're looking at this example, you then look at the comparison section, which is that bottom box. The comparison form asks you for the annuity total value, in this example, $105,000. The annuity surrender value, in this example, $1,035. So the surrender charges applicable at exchange are $1,500, and then you have to give an estimated anticipated surrender date of the contract that's being replaced. Again, it cannot be prior to the application date. Now, here's an example of why this would potentially be not in good order. You have on question 11 on the suitability form that there will be no penalty or charge to obtain these funds. But then on the product comparison worksheet, it shows a $1,500 surrender charge. That is inconsistent. This would have to be NIGO'd and corrected by the customer in writing. Now, here's the key of what Florida is expecting. Market value adjustment cannot be included in the product comparison worksheet questions regarding the annuity total value, annuity surrender value, as well as the surrender charges applicable at exchange. MBA is only included on the suitability form question 11, that top box. So on the product comparison form, the bottom box on this screen where it has the annuity total value, the annuity surrender value, and the surrender charges cannot contain any positive or negative MBA. So in this example, if the annuity value was 105 and the surrender was 1035, but let's say there's a positive $3,000 MBA, you cannot include that $3,000 positive MBA. You're required to show that there's $1,500 in surrender charges. Where you're going to show the positive MBA is question 11 on the suit form, the top of this screen, where it says, if yes, total amount of charge penalty, if applicable, positive or negative MBA. You would put positive 3,000. So make sure you're following the guidance, because these are easy ways to cause NIGOs and always have to go back to your customer. That's why we want to try to be as clear up front and as much transparency as we can. So again, I just like to highlight this question 11 box of the fact of make sure that any market value adjustment is not included on the product comparison form, only included in question 11 on the suitability form. Now with that, there are quite a few questions that I'm going to start answering here. If you have a question you have not asked, please make sure you get that typed in. Looks like we got about 20 minutes, so we'll try to get through all these that we can. One of the questions is, will the beginning be available for viewing later? Yes. If you registered for this webinar, you will get a link with the recording for this webinar. That way you can view it as many times as you need. Okay, are you going to provide this? Yes, again, we not only do we have the webinar that you'll get a recording of, but we have those step-by-step guides that have very similar information, so please make sure you take advantage of those. One question is, why does questions 16, 20, 21 need to align when they have different box sizes? Well, so that's something that we are working on. Again, the guidance that we have received is somewhat new. We are working through it, which is why we're doing these, these calls and these webinars. We are actively in the process of going out and actually changing our paper apps to include more space on these product comparison forms. But what I would tell you is use Firelight. Firelight, you will never have an issue with space. You can put all the information that you need. It is designed to do so. The only issue you could have is on paper apps, and we are actively working to get that fixed. So if these are completed incorrectly via the e-app, will it not allow the advisor to proceed? No, e-app is not built to know what is or is not correct, because as you can see from the Florida forms, everything is pretty much manual. I mean, everything is almost, most of the questions are where you actively write in information. There's no way for Firelight to know what you wrote to determine if it is or is not acceptable. It will not let you continue if you have blanks, but it's not going to be able to tell you if the information is or is not correct. There's just a question. I apologize, I don't understand it. It just says if it's out of surrender, so I'm not sure what that pertains to. Yes, you will get a copy of the presentation that will be sent out. Question, it says it's probably not possible from a liability point, but it sure would be helpful to have a library of the competitors' legacy policies. So yeah, that's not something that we would be able to provide, to utilize with the product comparison worksheet. I completely agree, it'd be helpful. That's just something when you're sitting down going through this information with the customer, using the information they have about the product you're replacing to complete those forms. One question regarding question 18, you recommend using the space directly below the question to further describe the writers. However, your e-app does not allow the white space to be used. The reason it doesn't allow the white space to be used on e-app is because the section about where you can input the writer name and everything has unlimited space, and you can actually provide all that information at that point. I apologize, I don't understand the next question, so I'll just kind of move on from there. Yeah, someone just made a comment that it does seem complex. It is complex. It is very complex. It's much different than obviously what we do on our national forms, but we have to take the guidance given to us, and we have to make sure that we're meeting those expectations. We have very clear guidance of what is and is not acceptable, and that's the information that we have to review based off of. So that's why we're trying to do these step-by-step guides, trying to do the webinars, trying to do the calls. to give you as much information as we have up front. That way you know exactly what is expected, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, to avoid those types of NIGOs. If you walk out of here and you still have more questions, you can always call our sales desk. They will get you answers, I can promise you. Reutilize these webinars, use the resources we have created for you. Most of the time, all questions asked to us are in some version already located somewhere else. So using those resources is key. When the account has matured, do we answer all the questions the same? Well, I think it depends on the questions. If you have if it's already matured, so I'm assuming when you say mature, you mean out of surrender. Obviously, maturity is something different. If it's out of surrender, obviously answer the questions based on the fact that it's out of surrender. If it's matured, you would still answer all the questions the same. It just obviously would be out of surrender. So it just depends on the question that you're completing at the time. It asks, please address question 19, annuitization value. Is it the maturity value? So the annuitization value, I'm going to back up here to question 19. Okay, just a little bit more here. So question 19 has annuitization value. So if the customer were to actually annuitize their contract, every annuity contract can be annuitized. If they were to annuitize their contract, what value would they receive? That's what we're asking for from an annuitization value perspective. It says question 16 and 20 PCW. I have been advised that 16 investment components and 20 loss of benefits cannot be the same, as they are asking different questions. So that guidance is incorrect. 16, 20, and 21 should be the same answers, excluding any death benefit or death benefit rider option from 21, since it's not a living benefit. And that's why we try to pre-fill the Athene side as much as we can to show that consistency. But 16, 20, and 21 should match, including anything listed in 18 outside of death benefit or death benefit rider in question 21. For product comparison, 23 through 25, can these be pre-filled with Athene? So if you go on Firelight, they are. So again, this is a great reason to use Firelight. I'm going to get back to those here. If you go to Firelight, this information is pre-filled on the Athene side. On the paper apps, some are not, just depends on when the product was released. As we are currently working on the product comparison forms to give more space for paper apps, we are also pre-filling everything to see the COD or see the strategy allocation form on our side. So we are working that direction. I do not know when that will be completed. Until that point, if it has space for you to put the rates and the terms, you have to put the rates and the terms. For 24 and 25 on the PCW, do you need the name of the index to correlate? No. So that's a great question, because we want to make sure it's 100% clear. On 24, you do not put the index name. On 25, you do not put the index name. All they want is, you go back to 24, here's an example, 3% 1 year, 5% 2 year, 25, 45% 1 year, 110% 2 year. Nowhere for 24 or 25 does it ask for the index name, so make sure you do not put that. That's what you put in question 26. The suitability questionnaire is redundant. It requires long answers and repeated same information. I agree with you. Again, this is not a form that we have created. This is a form that these are questions we are required to ask. I think in all fairness, they don't ask any of the exact same questions twice. Is there questions that they ask that may have to do with other questions? Yes. Just probably trying to make sure that, both you and the customer are being consistent. So if there are questions that are related, that is true. Could you call them redundant? I guess it depends on how you look at the question. But, they're looking for consistency, and that's the key when it comes to suitability. 26, PCW, need to list a fixed rate. No. 26 on the PCW, you do not list the fixed rate, because 26 is only asking for the basically index strategy options. Since obviously the fixed option is not a index strategy option, you do not have to include that in 26. Question is, what if there's a margin? I'm assuming margin is the spread. Yes. So if that's one of the limitations in question 23, then you would put that information. Best place to put it None of the questions in 24, 25, 26 asks what the spread is. So the only time you would put spread is in question 23. If there's a spread, you would put spread. In your example, consistency, why is CD and bond not considered the same, as CD is a form of a bond? Because from the perspective of you can invest in the certificate of deposit, you can invest in the bond, you can invest in stocks and mutual funds. A lot of customers, I think depends on who you ask, but deem those individual type of investments. That's what the state of Florida is looking for. Question 11 on the suitability form. The step-by-step guide indicates annuity or life insurance, but the question on the form says any product, which is the proper way to, so let me go to question 11 here. It's just easier so everyone can see the questions. Jump back to the suitability form. Will the proposed annuity replace any product? So we've actually asked the state of Florida, and this is only meant to be if it's replacing an annuity or life insurance product. While it does say any product, again, we do not word the questions. We have no control over what the question asks, but it's only meant to be determinative, is this a replacement? It's only a replacement if it's replacing an annuity or a life insurance contract. Does the date in that box from the P7 need to match the estimated date on page 1? No, because one of the questions asked for the anticipated estimated issue date of the Athene contract. The other asked for the anticipated surrender date of the contract being replaced. Those would not be able to be the same date. Why not build edit checks into the form and reduce the percentage of NIGOs? Again, we're very limited on what we can actually do. On Firelight, we can't pre-populate or build anything in triggers that tell you if it's correct or not correct. Because again, almost all these answers are free form. There's no way that we can actually build in the system to read what you write to know if it relates to other questions. It's just, when everything is so free form, it does limit the ability. Is the suitability questionnaire form in a checklist form in a NIGO? So I apologize, I'm not understanding the question to be able to answer. One of the next questions, questionnaire question 8. This is the source of funds on the suitability form. If the funds were originally in an annuity, but then were moved to a brokerage account before coming to Athene, what should we list here? Annuity. So it's where the money is coming to us from. It's coming to us from a brokerage account, list brokerage account, but that is still a replacement if it was in an annuity within the last 13 months. So if you're sending the money to us from a brokerage account, the source of funds is a brokerage account, but you have to show it as a replacement, which means you have to show the comparison form. So, that's where you have to be careful. Anytime you move money from an annuity to another source to then back into an annuity, you do create some confusion, and it does make it more difficult. Comparison form question 18. The described section is not fillable. So yes, again, that's fillable on the e-app when it comes into the actual question about the rider name. Comp form, completion form, you said question number 16, 18, and 21 should be consistent on the existing side, but aren't consistent on the pre-filled side. Well, they are consistent. So if you look at the actual form that we have, jump to it here. So if you look at 16 and 21, our answers are consistent. I guess the only thing you're not going to see is tax deferral as a living benefit. I think it's hard to say that's a living benefit provided by the annuity contract, but you can absolutely list it. 18 is not going to be consistent with 16 and 21 because 18 is specifically asking about the riders. If there's no riders, then that's not going to have anything listed other than a no. And then the fact of make sure that question 20, now in 20, you pre-fill both the replace side and the Athene side. So make sure that, again, you're being consistent with those answers. Okay, another question here. Comparison form number 26. What is the strategy has a margin? Again, I think we've already covered the margin. Question 11, MBA charge. This is the suitability form, so I'm actually going to jump to this real quick. Okay, so what's at the bottom of the screen, question 11 on the suit form. MBA charge. Clarification on what you said about assuming the MBA being a positive or negative. Again, it's not an assumption. You have to put positive or negative. So where it says question 11, if applicable, positive or negative market value adjustment, make sure you put the positive or negative. You have to tell if it's positive or negative. We cannot assume one or the other. The reason I think what's asking is if we don't indicate that it's a negative, or it's showing a positive number, correct? I mean, again, the form is specifically asking you for positive or negative. You have to do as the question is asking to put positive or negative. That is what the expectation is. Are we able to replace an annuity before or after 2 years? No. So we don't actually allow any replacements out under 2 years old. Please explain Firelight. Firelight is an e-app platform where you can actually go and the application, the suitability form, the product comparison worksheet, everything is electronic. So it's basically the electronic version of doing a paper app. It is incredibly helpful. Where is the step-by-step guide available? It's available on the portal. So when you actually go out and to the state of Florida on our portal, and you can access all the forms out there, these forms are available out there. And I'm sure if you call into our sales team, they'd be more than happy to get those to you as well. How would this be from a 401k rollover? So, and I apologize, not knowing really what question that's pertaining to, it's hard to provide the answer. Where do I get access to Firelight? That's something you're going to want to discuss with the group that you are rolling up under, and they should be able to help you with that. Is a 1035 exchange names anywhere here? Is 1035 exchange names anywhere here? So again, I apologize, I'm not really understanding the question. Can you repeat where we can access a step-by-step guide? It's on the Athene portal. So when you go out and get our applications, our CODs, our suitability forms, all that kind of stuff, these guides are out there for you as well. Does the estimated date in question 1 need to match the date of the disclosure of surrender charges box? Again, no. It's probably best that, there's really no way they would match, because the fact that if you look at the middle of this screen that's on the screen right now, what that's asking for is anticipated surrender date. We're never going to issue our contract the same day the other contract is surrendered. It's always going to take, a couple of, whether it's 2 days, 10 days, whatever it is, for us to get the money, get the thing issued, get it reviewed. So the date of surrender on this question and product comparison worksheet question 1, where it asks for the estimated issue date of the Athene contract, would not be able to be the same. The key is that neither this date or question 1 can be prior to the application date. So it looks like at this point we have covered all the questions. Again, first we just always want to say thank you. I know it takes time out of everyone's day to get on these calls. We hope you took something away from this. We know that this information is complex. We know that it can be confusing. That's why we want to do everything we can to provide as much guidance as possible of what the expectations are from the state of Florida around, what answers are acceptable and what answers are not acceptable. So we hope that you found this valuable. If you still have questions, if there's something you are confused about, please do not walk away and just be confused. Please make sure you pick up the phone and call in to Athene. Sorry, I just got rid of my screen here. Well, let me try to click over here. What I want to show is the the best phone number to get a hold of our sales team. So 888-266-8489. And again, sorry that I hit the wrong button and closed out my screen. You can use option 3, extension 18670. That will get you to our sales team. They can help answer any questions that you have. If they do not know the answer, which they are very capable, our sales team is, of knowing what we are not asking for. If they do not know, they do know how to get a hold of us in compliance. We can help get those questions answered for you. But again, thank you so much for taking time out of your day for logging into the call. You will receive a recording of this, so please utilize that in the future, as well as all the other resources. And as always, again, thank you for your time and thank you for your business. We really do value you and your partnership. Thank you.